From relationships, issues dealing with race, gender, and sexual temptations to controversial trending topics, they answer the real-life questions you want to know. It's R.C. and Samuel, the Blakes brothers.
Well, hello and welcome to the Blakes Brothers Show. I am R.C. Blakes, and what's your name?
I am Samuel Blakes.
You sure about that?
I'm positive.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, it's good to be back again. It's good to be able to share with the people. And as always, we like to discuss things that need to be discussed and answer questions for, real life questions for people as men and as pastors, but from a practical as well as a biblical perspective. And let's jump right in. Here's the question. She says, my husband and I are in our early 70s, and I can finally admit that we're old. We have 4 great children and a lot of grandkids. We've always taken care of our kids and have always been there when they've needed us. But now that we're old and we need them, we're seeing that it's like pulling teeth to get them to help us with simple tasks, like driving us to the doctor's office or taking us to the store to get our medication. It hurts me to my core that they're being so selfish, especially because we didn't try to raise them that way. Did we do something wrong in the way we raised them? A heartbroken mother. What are your thoughts?
Initially, my initial thought is probably you've raised your children in a manner that causes them to be selfish and not selfless. Yeah. Oftentimes, I think when kids are raised without a sense of responsibility and they are raised without understanding that they have to make investments into the lives of other people and even into their own lives, I think it comes back to bite you.
What I've discovered, being now the father of 4 adult kids, what I've discovered is that a lot of what we call great parenting or doing our best to raise our kids is really what degenerates them as adults.
Right.
Because, in our minds, it's like, give my child everything I can give him or her, whatever they want, give it to them. That's great parenting, when it's really not.
Right.
And I have to admit that to some degree, I've done that kind of parenting because I'm the father of 3 girls. So I love my 3 girls, and I have 1 son, my only son.
Right.
So I've spoiled my kids to a certain extent. But it wasn't the way you and I were raised.
Right.
You and I were raised with a father who gave us what we needed, but rarely gave us what we wanted. He made us understand that we had to work for what we wanted. And our family became our community. And we were raised to understand the necessity of investing in your community,
right,
investing in one another as brothers, investing in our parents, as well as they invest in us. But most kids today are not raised with that sense of responsibility.
And can I add, our father rarely gave us what we wanted, and he was able to do so.
He was very much so able to do so.
But he had made a determination that we were going to be men. One of the things that I think every parent needs to know about your boys particularly is one day your boys are going to be somebody's husband.
And your daughters are going to be somebody's wife.
Yeah.
And so when I read this, it breaks my heart because, we have a mother who's in her 70s.
Certainly.
And we're there for our mother.
Right.
We're there at her beck and call. We bring her to the movies. We bring her to dinner. She can drive herself. She has her own car.
We leave our houses to put her garbage out.
We leave our houses to go put her garbage out. We drive her. We pick her up. She can very well drive herself. She's in better health than you and I both put together.
Right.
But we were raised that way. And so it breaks my heart that she's experiencing this.
One of the things I'd like to say is, the Bible talks about our children being like arrows in the hands of a marksman. And literally what it's saying is whatever direction we aim them in, ultimately is the direction they will go in. And sometimes I think, and this is my personal opinion, children are mothered to death.
Yeah.
And they've not been given a sense of responsibility and accountability. So in times when they are needed, they won't show up.
Yeah. So my heart goes out to her relative to her kids, but at the same time, I think encouragement for her and for her husband is that God is always faithful.
Certainly.
You know, I was just teaching in Bible study last night about Jesus' love school. You know, Jesus taught love school.
Right.
A lawyer walked up on him and said, "What's the greatest commandment?" And Jesus turned around and said that you love the Lord God with all your heart, your mind, your soul. And the second is like it, that you love your neighbor as you love yourself. There are 3 levels there. You have to love God first. You have to then love yourself. And then you're equipped to love your neighbor.
Certainly.
God is our ultimate source. We make our investments in God, you know, and I would say to this mother, your investment is in God. Every relationship that is developed outside of God, love for God and love for yourself, is not an investment. It's really a liability.
Right.
You know, it's subject to it's subject to withdrawal without ever making deposit. That's the risk we take with having love affairs, with getting married, with having children. None of it is certain that these people are going to love us back the same. Sometimes this is true even of your own kids. But ultimately, your heart has to turn back to God because God is the only constant. He is the source, and He is the only constant. And so pray for your kids, but understand that God is your source.
So we're going to take a break, and we'll come back, and we'll deal with this some more.
Yeah.
You're listening to a BAMM Network original, The Blakes Brothers. If you have questions for the Blakes Brothers, email them to theblakesbrothers@gmail.com.
Well, welcome back to the Blakes Brothers Show. I'm R.C. Blakes, and I'm sitting here with my brother Samuel Blakes, and we've been discussing a question that has been submitted to us from a lady that's in her 70s.
Right.
She and her husband have kids who are adult kids. They have a lot of grandchildren, but they feel uncared for as it pertains to their kids and apparently their grandkids as well.
Certainly.
And so we've been just kind of discussing what could be some of the root problems to what makes a child, an adult child, negligent of an aging parent. But what do we say to this mother whose heart is clearly broken? My advice starts with the spiritual, and that is you have to really turn your heart back to God, who's always been your source for 70 plus years.
Right.
And who will continue to be your source. And that all of the relationships we develop, we make investments in them, but it's not always certain that those investments are going to be returned. So what would you say to her to encourage her at this point?
One of the things I would say is not to beat yourself up because of the impediments of your child. I mean, at a certain point, you've done all you can do. And it is then incumbent upon that child to take what you have done and, you know, be fruitful and multiply, so to speak.
Yeah.
Second thing second admonishment I would give to all parents is simply this. We know that we love our children, but sometimes we have to define how to love them that will, in ways that will help them in the future. Yeah. Love is not always just giving. Sometimes love
is withholding.
And putting requirements.
Yeah. Developing character.
Certainly.
You said something earlier as we were discussing this, you know, the possibility of discussing this question, and that is sometimes you can do everything right and you just have an ingrate.
That's exactly right.
The child's character is just flawed for no known reason. Ultimately, you have to, and I think this is good advice for parents as well as children as well as any individual. Ultimately, you have to learn to depend on God and yourself.
Yeah, I mean, how many times, particularly in what we do as pastors, how many times have we sat with mothers and parents who have done it all right, and the child still went wrong?
Still went wrong.
That's no reflection on the parental guidance that the child was given. It's just something that was innately in that particular child.
Absolutely.
So don't blame yourself for,
impediments within your children.
Exactly.
Also, I would say more than likely, usually in families, there's usually a consistent and common culture to sweep things under the rug.
Right.
You know what I mean? And we don't usually like to discuss difficult issues within the constructs of our families because you're my brother, I have to live with you. That's my mother, I have to live with you. This is my wife, my children. We have to be in the same space. You can choose your friends, but you don't choose your family. So sometimes we have the issues we really need to be discussing hidden within our hearts, and we'll send an email to somebody that we really don't know or does not know us at least.
Yeah.
Regarding an issue that we probably should have talked to our kids about. It's highly possible that this mother has never talked to her children about how she really feels for fear of them exiting her life. I would say that you have to purge your heart. You have to, at this point, you have to speak what's on your heart, and everybody involved needs to know how you feel about it.
Well, the bottom line is you never cure what you do not confront.
Yeah.
Issues that do not go addressed.
That's right.
Will go unchanged.
Absolutely. And so I would say, for her own emotional health, at least articulate what you're feeling in a way that is palatable, as best it can be, but in a way that gets the point over to your children.
We'll come back after the break.
You're listening to a BAMM Network original, The Blakes Brothers. If you have questions for the Blakes Brothers, email them to theblakesbrothers@gmail.com.
Welcome back to the Blakes Brothers Show. I am Samuel Blakes, and this is my brother, R.C. Blakes. And we've been talking, man, about some stuff today. We just got through talking about a heartbroken mother. Now we're going to go to our beautiful correspondent, Casey Ferran. Casey, what you got?
Hey, I'm Casey Ferran, your Blakes Brothers correspondent here in New Orleans with Teddy G. What's your question for the Blakes Brothers?
Whoa, this is me, Teddy G, sticking to the G code, and my question is this. I've dated black women all my life, and I recently started dating a white lady. She's very nice. However, she says that she wants me to be her Black Panther. I'm slightly offended, but, how should I take this?
Teddy G, Teddy G.
Teddy G, Teddy G. What are your thoughts about that? I mean,
Well, initially, it is comical.
Yeah.
I'm kind of taken back by it because, there are a lot of different shades of Panther.
Yeah.
The Black Panther.
Yeah, she wanted him to be her Black Panther. And of course, this, I think the driver, the emotional driver of this question, the unspoken, well, it's not even unspoken, it's the racial component,
Yeah.
Because he said, I have a white girlfriend, or however he worded it, you know what I mean?
Right.
Would it have been as offensive if it were a black girl that was asking him to be her Black Panther?
Right.
Black girl,
In
black,
my mind, certainly not.
Certainly not. So, I guess my question is, in his relationship with this girl, does he see race first? Why are you offended if you're having? Clearly, it sounds like you're having a sexual relationship.
Yeah.
It sounds like you're having that. So if you're that intimate with her,
or at least the desire,
yeah,
for a sexual relationship.
Why isn't she free enough to be able to say what she desires to say to you? And at the same time, I get it. I think it speaks to how far we have to go in terms of racial sophistication, for lack of another term. Just really understanding humanity over race. But then it makes you ask the question, what are her fantasies?
Certainly. Yeah, well, that's initially where my mind goes.
Yeah.
What's the motive behind,
articulating
Black Panther?
that? Yeah.
I think that when you come to a place of not seeing color, you won't speak color.
Most people are not there.
Right.
Black or white. Most people are not there. And you learn it when you start dealing with issues like this, interracial relationships.
At what point do you become my girlfriend, not my white girlfriend?
Yeah, exactly.
At what point do you become my panther?
Absolutely.
And not my black panther.
Not my black panther, So I think psychologists could have a real, fun time picking this apart, because there's a lot of psychology in this, clearly.
Certainly.
That speaks to many, many, many different levels of how we view race and what are the drivers behind their connection. Is he attracted to her because she's a white woman? Is she attracted to him because he's a black man?
Right.
Is the white woman his fantasy? Is the black man her fantasy?
Right.
Is this all sexual and nothing real?
Exactly. It's a tangled web.
It's a tangled web.
And there's so many different angles to look at it. The biggest problem for me is just, the acknowledgement of white, black.
Yeah.
Not relationship, but relationship with a white woman.
Yeah.
Not relationship, but relationship with a black man. If that is the foundation upon which relationship is built, that's a faulty foundation.
Well, and again, it speaks to how immature society is when it comes down to relationships, and how we definitely build relationships based on sand. The Bible gives this parable of one that builds on sand, one that builds on a rock. This relationship sounds like it's clearly built on sand. It's built on stuff that's not going to last.
Well, a healthy relationship is built on content and character. Unhealthy relationships are often built on color.
Yeah, color,
and
lust, fantasy,
lust and superficial stuff.
Superficial stuff. And he views her as his white woman. She views him as her black panther.
Right.
And so you get what you get. It's shallow.
Extremely.
Well, we're going to take a break, and I want you to stay right there. We'll be back to talk a little bit more about this.
Okay.
You're listening to a BAMM Network original, The Blakes Brothers. If you have questions for the Blakes Brothers, email them to theblakesbrothers@gmail.com.
Welcome back to the Blakes Brothers Show. I am Samuel Blakes, and this is my brother, R.C. Blakes.
Yes.
We've been talking about Teddy G's question concerning his Caucasian girlfriend wanting him to be her Black Panther. And we've given our thoughts on that, but it leads to an even broader discussion about relationships and the foundations of relationships and principles of relationships.
Absolutely. Teddy was concerned because this lady spoke her, I guess, truest feelings on whatever level that is.
Right.
And I think what Teddy G and even the woman needs, they both need instruction in terms of, the world needs instruction in terms of how to really do relationships. Most folk have no clue how to do relationships. And the driver, the foundation of any strong, healthy, intimate relationship is intimacy. And I like the way Bishop T.D. Jakes puts it. He says intimacy simply means intimacy.
Right.
So if I'm not free enough to be able to tell you exactly what's on my heart, and if you're not mature enough to be able to hear it, we may not really have a foundation for a relationship at that time.
Right.
And it may mean that I may require some more personal growth, or you may require some personal growth. But for him to be somewhat shaken behind this lady asking him to be her Black Panther, as a man, if he had some concerns about her motivation, he should just simply sit down and have that conversation with her.
Right.
It should not be, something that is festering within him, because a woman is trying to speak her heart to you. You should not see the color of the woman first. You should feel the spirit of the woman, know the heart of the woman. And the Bible puts it very plainly for us. It says, dwell with them, the wives, according to knowledge. That knowledge is gained through conversation.
Right.
Dr. Kervin Smith wrote a book, When Women Speak, Men Should Listen.
Yeah.
That knowledge of how to dwell with them is gained through conversation. So it's a beautiful thing when a woman is free enough to be able to speak her heart and her mind, but she has to be able to speak that heart and that mind to a man that's mature enough to hear it, because the foundation of any strong relationship is intimacy.
Well, and one of the things that has always alarmed me about many relationships, particularly, young relationships in this day and time. I doing what I do, I talk to so many young ladies, and this is the problem. Oftentimes they connect with men who want them to have sex, but don't want them to have an opinion.
Wow.
Wow. And I don't believe that it is a healthy relationship where a man loves your body but doesn't respect your mind.
Yeah. It's not, the young people term it as a situationship.
Right.
It's not even a relationship, because, when you start looking at the word relationship, ship speaks of a vessel that carries more than one passenger,
right,
going in the same direction, or at least in the same direction, ultimately to the same destination. It's not a relationship if you don't relate enough to be on the same page, going in the same direction, and that only happens where you have what? Mutual respect.
Well, it is possible to be in the same place and not be on the same page.
Absolutely.
Like I know, there's so many people who have lived together and been together for 30 years and don't know 30 things about each other, because they cohabitate, but they don't commune.
That's right.
They have no fellowship. They have no conversation. And communication is to relationship what all is to a car.
Absolutely.
It ain't going to run without it.
Absolutely.
And sooner or later, it's going to break down.
Communication, correct. It's like oil to a car. It's like oxygen to a body.
Right.
Without it, there is no life. There is no breath where there's no communication. This is how people come to a point in a relationship where they say, I love him or her, but I'm not in love. If you ask them to really explain that, they can't explain it.
Right.
What they're really saying is that we're no longer on the same frequency. And we're not on the same frequency because we're not really communicating. And because we had surface level interest that we built the relationship upon. So it's superficial.
Yeah. Well, we love each other as long as we're lying prostrate. We just can't stand each other standing up.
Wow.
Wow. Wonderful in the bed, but that's it. And every person listening needs to understand, and watching needs to understand, that at some point, your physiology is going to change.
Trust me, it does. But
and the thing that's going to matter is your psychology.
Yeah.
I
was flying with a couple some years ago, older man and his wife. Mm-hmm. Both happened to be pilots, and they had been married, I think, for like 40 plus years. And I was observing these people sitting up in the cockpit.
Yeah.
And they were holding hands and laughing. And I said, what makes a couple after all of those years have that kind of intimacy where they're still touching, they're still laughing, they're still conversing? Yeah. It was the fact that their relationship was based on things that were internal and not things external.
Intimacy.
Into me. See. Teddy needs to Teddy needs to come to relationship school.
That's exactly right. And it's a conversation that has to be had, because there's so many people who are connecting and hooking up and falling in love. I don't even like the term fall, because falling is always an accident.
Subject to injury, at worst death.
That's exactly right.
We should walk in love.
Consciously.
And you should not develop a love relationship based on your sexual drive towards a person.
Right.
You have to get to know the heart of that individual.
Because sometimes lust can camouflage itself as love.
It does. It really does. And then it'll make you feel like
sensations and
it'll
feelings.
Bring you to the altar.
Right.
And then 3 weeks after you leave the altar, you wake up and realize that you don't even like this person.
Right. Yeah. So it's a conversation that has to be had, and I thank God that He's given us the privilege to be able to have it, man.
Right now, we're going to take a break, and when we come back, we're going to be looking at a question that comes from a young man that feels like he's the black sheep in his family. Mm-hmm. We're going to discuss that, and I think it's going to be some deep stuff. We'll be back.
You're listening to a BAMM Network original, The Blakes Brothers. If you have questions for the Blakes Brothers, email them to theblakesbrothers@gmail.com.
Well, welcome back. Welcome back to the Blakes Brothers Show. I'm R.C. Blakes, and of course, this is my brother Samuel Blakes, and we were talking about Teddy G and his love affair with his white girlfriend who wants him to be her Black Panther. But now we're getting on to something a little more serious. I think you have the question. What is he asking?
All right. This question is from Jonathan. He says, I'm 21 years old. I've been to jail. I go to church every Sunday. I'm in school getting my degree. I'm doing everything I'm supposed to do, but it seems like no matter what I do, it's never enough for my parents. They're always nagging at me about not being good enough. I have 2 other siblings, and my parents don't treat them the same way. I'm the black sheep. It's gotten to the point where I don't want to be around them. So I stay away and stay to myself. Should I continue to isolate myself from my family? What's your opinion on that?
No, he should not. No, he should not. And I think he's just 21 years old, which means his perspective is limited in terms of
Skewed.
experience.
Yeah.
It's very much so skewed. And 21, I know where I was mentally at 21, trying to prove I'm a man, but I really still had a whole lot of childish ways.
Yeah.
And I felt like our father was a tyrant, felt like he was extremely difficult.
Certainly.
And he didn't care. You know what I mean? That's how I felt.
Yeah.
But at the same time, he was the patriarch, and he willed things to be the way he wanted them to be. So I feel where he's coming from. So he has to first of all understand that he doesn't have anybody else in life that's going to probably love him as much as his mother does.
Yeah.
He has to understand that. And love sometimes, I think you said this earlier, is not pacifying.
Right.
Sometimes love is
Confronting.
it's confrontational. It's difficult. Sometimes it's abrasive.
Yeah.
Because the individual sometimes, especially parents, see more for you than you can see for yourself. And I think this is the beginnings of what's going on with Jonathan at this time.
And for every young person who might find themselves in this position, I think it is extremely necessary that you make sure that you are not misinterpreting tough love for nagging.
Perspective. Perspective.
Right.
Perspective. I have a different perspective on life now as a 54-year-old man than I had as a 24-year-old man.
Yeah.
So the things that our parents introduced and pushed that didn't make sense to me then is absolute wisdom now.
Well, the truth is those things that we interpreted as nagging then are directly responsible for where we are now.
Absolutely.
You know, but at that time we were interpreting it as nagging, and
you're not letting me do what I want to do.
Exactly.
And that's really the little boy being broken off of you.
Certainly.
And you see, at the mere fact that you're 21 years old, Jonathan, and you just got out of jail. I've never been to jail, actually. I'm sorry. Never been to jail. I go to church every Sunday. I'm in school getting my degree. You have to understand the necessity of accountability.
Right.
At 21 years old, you're really in the grips of your manhood being molded and shaped. And sometimes you look at your siblings and you say, well, you're easier on him or her in this area, but sometimes their need is not in the area where you have need.
Wow. Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Certainly.
So we parent. There's no cookie cutter parenting. We parent. Parenting is tailor made for each child. I have 4, and I've had to parent each of them differently. I'll give you an example. My youngest kid, your nephew, and my next youngest, your niece, have gone off to college. One in Illinois, one in Mississippi.
Right.
My firstborn, I said, you ain't going nowhere. You staying right here in New Orleans.
Right.
Because parenting has to be tailored.
Now, when we come back, we're getting ready to go to break, but when we come back, we're gonna kind of get into the parents' side of it, because it seems like there's a comparison study going on with their kids. They're comparing one to the other.
Yeah.
So we're gonna kind of deal with that. Let's go to break. We'll be back.
You're listening to a BAMM Network original, The Blakes Brothers. If you have questions for the Blakes Brothers, email them to theblakesbrothers@gmail.com.
Welcome back to the Blakes Brothers Show. I am Samuel Blakes, and this is my brother R.C. Blakes. And man, we really got into something just now. We were talking about this young man who feels like he's the black sheep, and we were talking about it from his vantage point. Let's look at it from the parental vantage point. Because I heard something in his statement, and this is what I heard. I heard him say that his parents are always, be it in his mind or be it reality, always comparing him to his other sibling. And that's a real deal.
Yeah, well, during the break, you and I just kind of started talking about our childhood, and you articulated something that I had never heard. You're 50 years old. I'm 54.
Right.
I haven't heard this in 50 years.
Yeah.
And when you said it, I had to acknowledge it because I witnessed it. But
Right.
at the time as a child, I didn't realize the psychological or even the emotional impact. And what was that you said?
Well, you were the first grandchild, and the first child. So you set the standard for what a child's supposed to be, what a grandchild's supposed to be. And my grandfather particularly showed differences between you and I. And oftentimes I can clearly hear him, as clearly as you and I hear each other now, saying to me, why don't you be more like your brother? Why don't you be more like your brother? And I remember how that made me feel as a child.
Yeah.
So I spent my time oftentimes trying to be like you. That's why I would try to wear your clothes and all that kind of stuff.
Wow.
Because psychologically that was embedded in my mind. Wow. And I think every parent needs to be very careful as to making that statement to their children. Because first of all, what it does is it drives a wedge many times.
Yes, sir.
Of course, you and I we never had that wedge.
That's
because
right.
we weren't, that just wasn't our makeup.
No.
We weren't raised that way. But it could possibly drive wedges between children, cause jealousy, and then just cause inferiority complexes, man.
Yeah.
And really what that statement does is it often robs the child of their individuality.
Yeah. Trying to be somebody else's expectation.
That's exactly right.
And the biblical reference to this is Joseph and his father, how his father loved him more than his brothers, and the Bible says they hated him for it.
Right.
And then when he told them his dream, the Bible says they hated him even the more.
Right.
This was caused by poor parenting.
That's right.
And you said something. If it's real or if it's perceived by him, it's still the parental responsibility to analyze or discern your child,
right,
and to address those sub issues that your child has.
Right.
I think it speaks to a big problem today, especially with dealing with grown children. We don't really pay attention to our grown children's feelings.
Right.
Because we feel like, I've raised you for 18 years, I spent my money on you, educated you, I'm done. Just recently, I reached out to one of your nieces, and I thought about something that I had done more than a decade ago, and I said, I'm sorry.
Wow.
And I could feel the tension, and I didn't even know that this was an issue. This was unintentional, but in prayer about my children, the Spirit of God said, think about how your child felt about what you did 12 years ago, meaning well by somebody else, but I think I slighted my own child in the process.
Right.
And it liberated our relationship. So you're correct. If it's real or if it's perceived, the parents have a responsibility to address this issue. And I would also say to him, some kind of way, respectfully, you need to communicate what you're feeling to your parents.
Right.
Because sometimes they don't even realize how badly they're hurting you.
And see what you did when you told her you were sorry, was you calmed the waters of her soul, her spirit, man.
Absolutely.
Calm those waters for her. You know, you can't imagine how long she probably been waiting to hear those words.
Yes, sir.
Whether it is real or perceived.
Real or perceived.
You know, it is our parental job, not just to feed them, not just to clothe them, but to make sure that they are emotionally well and emotionally healthy. So that's powerful, man.
Yeah, so there's a responsibility that the parents definitely have, as well as he has a responsibility to accept accountability. But I'm in agreement with you, because at 21, though the world calls him a man, he's still a kid.
Right.
And somebody at 21, our father parented us. You know, he respected us, I guess, as men, but he parented us like, you know, we were his babies still.
Certainly.
And he was patient and tolerant.
Yeah, yeah. So you know, whichever side the error is on, there's an error somewhere. And all parties have to own or take ownership of their part in whatever goes wrong. So we're going to go to break and we'll be back.
You're listening to a BAMM Network original, The Blakes Brothers. If you have questions for The Blakes Brothers, email them to theblakesbrothers@gmail.com.
Well, welcome back to the Blakes Brothers Show, and we have truly enjoyed. I'm R.C. Blakes, and what's your name?
Samuel Blakes.
Samuel Blakes. Man, it's been a great show today. We got a chance to talk about a lot of things.
Right.
And I'm just really enjoying the platform and the opportunity to reach a brand new generation with the wisdom that we've gleaned over the last half century.
Isn't that something, man?
That is something, man.
There's over 100 years between the two of us, brother.
104 years between the two of us.
And if we have not learned anything in these years,
I promise you,
shame on us.
One of the biggest lessons is that time flies, you know,
Right,
especially when you're having fun.
Yeah.
And take advantage. Really live your life. Live
Right.
your life to the full every day, you know.
Yeah, time flies when you're having fun. Just make sure you don't use all your time having fun.
No, don't do it.
Do something productive.
Live your life on purpose, you
Right.
know. But I think we dealt with a lot of great things today, and I want to say to everyone that's listening, you know, to reach out to us at inbox us at our Facebook page, the Blakes Brothers.
Right.
You know, and also follow us on our various social media sites. You know, you can find me at Twitter, RC_Blakes, on Facebook, RC Blakes Jr., and Instagram, RC Blakes, as well as my YouTube channel, RC Blakes Jr. What are yours?
On Twitter, at SR Blakes, on Instagram, at SR Blakes, Periscope, at SR Blakes, Facebook, Samuel R. Blakes, YouTube, Bishop Samuel R. Blakes.
Yes. So we've enjoyed this today, and our prayers that you've gotten something out of this. We'd love to answer your questions. Reach out to us again. Follow our page on Facebook, the Blakes Brothers, and you send us your questions. We'd love to be able to address your questions and to lend whatever we have to your development and to your evolution.
My hopes are echo my brother's hopes, should I say that. I hope that something was said today that was really beneficial to you. Our aim is not to impress, but to improve.
That's right.
We are here because we want this world to be better. We want this city to be better. We want, you know, your lives to be better. So that's why we deal with the topics we're dealing with and in the ways we deal with them.
Yes. So, you know, just keep your head up, keep living forward, and know that the best is yet to come. Our time is just about gone, bud.
Yeah. Everybody, stay on top, and we'll see you next time
You
on the
better
Blakes
know it.
Brothers Show.
God bless you. Talk to you soon.
This has been a BAMM Network production.